Okay, we are continuing in our chapter about the circulatory system, and we are on page 294 in your book, and you should have your study guide, page 196 out. This is the back of what you did yesterday. So yesterday you did 195, and today we're doing the other side. So have that out with you as I read to you from the book. Okay, so look over, pause me, look at your questions, know what you're listening for, and it'll make it so much easier as you listen and you're able to fill those in as I go. Your blood. The circulatory system is more than a heart with a network of vessels. It carries amazing, life-giving blood. An adult usually has about 4.7 liters, 5 quarts of blood flowing through his body. The blood has three very important jobs. Blood transports substances around the body. As the blood circulates, it helps keep the body's temperature at about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Blood also helps to defend the body against infections and diseases. So, transports things around the body, keeps the body's temperature normal, and helps defend against infections and diseases. Blood is made up of plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Plasma is the liquid part of blood. It is a clear yellowish liquid that is mostly water. The plasma can dissolve many substances such as proteins, sugars, and nutrients. The blood then carries these substances to all the parts of the body. The red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets float in the plasma. One tiny drop of blood contains at least 5 million red blood cells, 8,000 white blood cells, and 250,000 platelets. Isn't that amazing? Absolutely mind-blowing. God is amazing. When you learn more about nature and about our bodies and about the way things work, I just am struck at just how perfectly God did it all. It says science in the Bible. This is at the bottom of 294. Long before people understood the importance of blood, the Bible said the life of the flesh in the blood is in the blood. In the Old Testament, atonement for sins could occur only when blood was shed. These sacrifices were a sign of a sacrifice to come. They pointed to the great sacrifice that Jesus Christ made for the sins of all people. Hebrews 9:22 says that without shedding of blood is no remission. Only when Christ shed his precious blood could mankind's sins be forgiven. Red blood cells. Red blood cells are tiny blood cells that carry oxygen to all parts of the body. Each red blood cell is concave on both sides. This shape helps them squeeze through small capillaries without bursting. Each red blood cell is like a bus traveling on a route through the body. At the different stops, the red blood cell bus lets oxygen out and picks up some carbon dioxide. When the bus travels through the lungs, it lets out the carbon dioxide and picks up oxygen. Red blood cells are made in the bone marrow in the center of bones. About 100 million of them are produced every minute. If the body does not produce enough red blood cells, a person might become anemic. People who are anemic are often tired and may feel dizzy at times. These symptoms are caused by a lack of oxygen throughout the body because remember they're moving that oxygen around. With fewer red blood cells, not as much oxygen can be carried by the blood. Each red blood cell lives about 120 days. As red blood cells get older, they lose their shape and become fragile. They shrink in size and are carried to the spleen or the liver. There they are destroyed. Most parts of the old red blood cells are recycled by the body and used to make new cells. Interesting. Not only is it amazing that how God made our bodies, but that we have learned how they work. That's another cool thing. We talked about the man yesterday who it just took so long for people to learn how things worked. And sometimes ideas are going to be rejected as silly or too crazy. Inside each red blood cell is a protein called hemoglobin. Oxygen from the lungs attaches itself to the hemoglobin molecule. In this way, oxygen is carried to each part of the body. Together, the hemoglobin and oxygen give blood its bright red color. Each red blood cell has about 250 million hemoglobin molecules. Each of these molecules can carry 4 molecules of oxygen, so each red blood cell carries about 1 billion oxygen molecules. Now the next page, 296. White blood cells help the body fight diseases and infections. The body has many types of white blood cells. Some recognize and identify germs such as bacteria or viruses. Others make chemicals that fight the invading germs. Yet another type of white blood cell surrounds and kills the invaders. White blood cells can move to wherever they are needed to fight the invading germs. Your body has fewer white blood cells than it has red blood cells. However, your body can make more white blood cells when they are needed. For example, when you are sick, your body makes more white blood cells to fight the infection or disease. A person whose body does not produce many white blood cells gets sick easily. His body cannot protect him from invading germs. Platelets. Platelets are small fragments of cells. These fragments help form blood clots. A blood clot is a jelly-like mass of blood cells that stops the flow of blood from an injury. If the skin is injured, the platelets help plug the broken blood vessels. A scab forms on the skin. Underneath the scab, the body begins repairing the damaged tissue. The scab makes a barrier to keep out germs until the skin grows back. The scab falls off when the tissues have healed. Platelets also make sure that blood vessels do not leak. They can stick to torn blood vessels and form a patch that slows any blood loss. A platelet is less than half the size of a red blood cell. Each usually wears out in about 9 days. However, new platelets are always being formed in the bone marrow. Blood types. For many years, people tried to transfer blood from a healthy person to a sick or injured person. Sometimes this transfer of blood, called a blood transfusion, helped the patient. Many times, however, the patient's condition got worse, sometimes ending in death. It was not until 1901 that Karl Landsteiner, an Austrian physician, discovered why blood transfusions did not always work. He found that blood is not all the same. Instead, there are different types. Today we know that there are 4 main types of blood. We also know that some types cannot be successfully mixed with another type. A person who gives blood is a blood donor, and a person who receives a blood transfusion is a blood receiver. The main blood types are A, B, AB, and O. These names identify the special proteins found in the red blood cells. Some people have only the A protein or only the B protein. Other people have both proteins and some have neither. If a person with type A blood receives type B blood, the white blood cells in the A blood, identify the B proteins as enemies. Remember, your body is always looking to see if it needs to fight infection. In trying to get rid of the enemy, the white blood cells cause the red blood cells to clump together. This clogs the blood vessels, which does not help the patient. Since type O blood does not have either type of protein, it can safely mix with any other type of blood. People with type O blood are called universal donors. Those with type AB blood are called universal receivers because blood with both A and B proteins can safely receive any other type of blood. Okay, 298. Blood donation. Blood transfusions have saved many lives. Blood is often needed for people who have been in accidents or who are having surgery. If other healthy people did not donate some of their blood, these blood transfusions would not be possible. Usually, to donate blood, a person must be at least 17 years old. He must be healthy and weigh at least 110 pounds. When a person donates blood, his body makes more blood cells to replace the one he is given. After the blood is donated, it is tested to determine the blood type. It is also checked for diseases. The blood is often separated into parts: plasma, red blood cells, and white blood cells and platelets. This way, several patients can use different parts of the same unit of donated blood. The blood is stored in a blood bank until someone needs it. Most donated blood can be stored for only a short time before it is no longer useful. That is why blood donors are always needed. I saw something when they were talking about World War II, and they were trying to get, they were doing this. People were giving blood and they were sending it overseas, and then they were having doctors and medics carry the blood and try to get it out to the field, and it saved more people by being able to give blood transfusions on the battlefield. But it was dangerous to carry all that blood around, but it helped save many lives. And I love this little story here. This is about Charles Drew. Charles Drew was an African American surgeon in the early 20th century. At that time, blood could only be stored for a few days before it could no longer be used. Drew, however, found a way to separate the plasma from the red blood cells. This way, the blood could be stored for much longer and then later mixed and used. He also discovered that plasma by itself can be used with blood of any type. This means that people who could not receive a certain type of whole blood could still receive plasma from that type of blood. During World War II, Drew helped establish blood banks to store blood. He also found ways to preserve plasma so that it could be shipped over great distances. Many wounded soldiers were saved because of Drew's discoveries. He also created blood mobiles. These refrigerated trucks could safely carry donated blood to where it was needed. Blood mobiles are still used today by organizations such as the Red Cross. Okay, so I hope that you were able to complete this as I read, that you listened and heard each answer. If not, you can go back to those pages 294 to 298. I want you to do a little bit of searching for me and come back and put on your comments. I want you to give me either a phrase that we use that uses the word blood. Like blood is thicker than water. And a lot of times that's talking about like relationships, your family. So give me a phrase that we use that uses the word blood, and you can just look it up. You can go to Google and say phrases that use blood, and it'll give you lots of them. Or you can give me a Bible verse that uses the word blood, and for that you can use a concordance. Lots of Bibles, if you go to the back, have like a reference section, and if you look up a certain word, it'll give you scriptures that use that word. So either you can do one or the other. Give me a verse that uses the word blood, or give me a phrase that we use commonly that uses the word blood. Okay?